I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Pat Dion from Dion RC Sails. I'm a member of the Steveston RC Sailing Club. I've been asked to give a bit of a talk on soling 1 meter boat setup. So I'm going to break it down into 3 segments, one on pre-race setup, race day setup, and post-race. First thing I'm going to talk about is pre-race setup. You've gotten yourself into a soling and you got it basically together, and so I set my boat up prior to going to the race, and here's what I do. The first thing I want to do is make sure the top of the mast is in the center of the boat. So I will measure from the top of the mast to say the shear line where the upper shroud attaches, and I want both sides of the boat to be the same. I give myself a tolerance of say a 1/16 of an inch. Once I establish that measurement, I will lay the boat on say its side and sight down the mast to see that the mast is not bent bowed in the middle of the mast. And so how I adjust that is with the lower shroud. So I got an aft lower on both sides. So basically what I'm trying to do is make sure the mast is in the boat straight. I don't typically measure for rake because everybody's mast is a little bit different. So no 2 masts are the same. So my basic setup for rake is measuring from the bow to the hook, and that's around 49 inches. That's my base setup for rake. And that varies from boat to boat. And so once I establish that, I check that my rudder servo is straight. I check that all the lines are clear inside the boat. I make sure my battery is charged. I got spare batteries for my radio, and I always carry 2 of these batteries on the day of the race. Okay, a battery, 900 milliamp battery should last you the whole day, but I always take a spare. I mean, the last thing you want to do is go to a race and travel. If you travel, sometimes it's an hour to get there, an hour to get back. You don't want your boat to break down and ruin your fun. Another thing I do on pre-race setup is I call it the base setup. It's a setup that I go to the race and I got things pre-marked, and so I know where to start and when I get there. Okay, the first thing I do is I sheet my boom and point it at the shroud. Okay. On this particular boat, I used a hook system for my sheet, and I have it pre-marked. And I do the same on the main boom. I sheet the boom to the corner of the transom, and I have a hook, and I have it pre-marked. And so I can always come back to the same mark. Okay, I also up here have my rake setting marked on my forestay, and there'd be a little felt mark right there, and then a felt mark on the jib halyard tension right there. And then I have my backstay marked. So this allows me to have a base setting so I'm not inventing the wheel when I get there. Because when you get to race day, you don't have a lot of time before the pre-race, maybe practice race, and so you want to be able to get to those settings right away. And the next topic is the day of the race. When I get there, I have my boat set up. The battery is in, I got my radio working, I've got spare batteries, and I'm ready for the day of the race. So I pre-set my boat at the base setting, and I make sure my rudder is straight. And I actually have a mark underneath here which you can't see, but it allows me to know my rudder is straight. And I want my rudder to center all the time. So you don't want to put the boat in the water and your rudder's crooked, because that's not going to allow it to sail properly. So now I put my boat in the water, you pick it up by the spreader, you drop it in the water, and you go up to windward, and you want the boat to sail without touching the rudder. A boat that's well set up will sail itself. And if the boat doesn't sail itself, you have to come in and make some adjustments. And it could be, once you put the boat in the water and you go head to wind, you want the jib and the main to luff at the same time. If the jib luffs before the main, you either have to let your jib out a little bit or bring the main in a little bit. So you make those slight adjustments. And what other setup that I always do, that's an upwind setup. You want to set your boat up to go downwind. And if you can come here and you notice the top batten on the main, you want it parallel to your boom. And how you adjust that is by using your vang. And if I over vang it, you see that batten is starting to poke. So you want that top batten to be parallel to the boom. So that's your basic setup for going downwind. Upwind, other adjustments you want. I have a little dot right on the jib boom and a dot on the main boom. And what I use that for is I'm measuring the depth of the boom. And I like the jib to be about 30 millimeters of depth and the main to be about 25 millimeters. Okay, the other thing I'm measuring is the twist of the main. Now the twist of the main is, you don't want your main to be tight, is the distance from the top batten, from the middle batten to the backstay. I like to have it about 40 to 50 millimeters. Very little backstay, light to moderate. These boats like to sail that way. So that's your basic setup. And as I say, I have everything marked so that I can always refer back to base. And you do minor adjustments while you sail. Your adjustments are millimeters in or out. Item number 3, the post race. After you race for the day, you've had maybe some breakdowns, some lines are frayed, a line is broken, you've got a servo problem. My advice is to take it home, fix it that day, or fix it the next day. Don't wait till the night before the next event. So make sure if your boat's prepared properly, everything's fixed, you can have your boat ready for the next event and go there and have a great day of sailing. I was at a regatta sailing my IOM, and I was pretty new to the sport, and a very good friend of mine from the rigging business, he was a good IOM sailor, Canadian champion, and he was the race officer of the day. And we're walking up the shoreline and I'm following my boat, and he whispers in my ear, he says, "Get your thumb off the rudder." And that's something that I've always remembered, get your thumb off the rudder, because if you're steering the boat, you're going slow. It's like a big brake. So, get the boat set up so it sails itself. Stay off the rudder the best you can. Use your sheet to depower the sails in and out. And win the start, win the race. Both these boats are the new boats from Doug at 3D Boats. And this one has a traditional wooden rig, which I built. And this one has your newer aluminum rig. Performance-wise, there's no real difference. Just this one is for the new consumers in the sport. It's a little easier to deal with an aluminum rig because all the parts you could buy commercially from RC supply shops. Where this one, you basically, it's a homemade mast and you have to source the right wood, mill it thing, and so it's somewhat, it's not a better mast, it's just as good as this mast, but this mast is a little more consumer friendly. Dion RC Sailing Club this year is hosting the Canadian Nationals, and all the people entered in the race will get their name in the draw to win this boat as you see it. Complete boat from 3D RC Boats, rigged by myself, sails by Dion, and a rig by Dion. So come and enter into our Canadian Nationals and get your name in on the draw. I'd like to thank you for taking some time to listen to what I had to say. I'm Pat Dion from Dion RC Sails, a member of Steveston's RC Sailing Club. If you have any questions you'd like to ask me, feel free to reach out to me at Dion RC Sails, and I can answer anything that you might want to ask me. And I hope to have some more videos in the future, so stay tuned.